Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel Surviving Narcissism Together. In today's video, I'm going to talk about narcissistic mothers, and this is a series that I'm going to start on speaking about the narcissistic dynamic in family roles. So, have you ever tried to explain something that your mother did to you, but only to hear, well, she's your mother and maybe, she sacrificed a lot for you, she fed you, she clothed you, she raised you, so you should be grateful. So, because of that, your points feel invalidated. You start to question yourself, you start to wonder if you're being ungrateful, too sensitive, if you're remembering what she did to you was wrong, if maybe you're the problem. But what happens when the person who is supposed to make you feel safe, who's your mom, is the very person who makes you feel like you constantly have to defend yourself? That's a real problem, and you're not at fault. So today I want to talk about that many people experience this but find it incredibly difficult to put into words, that they have a narcissistic mother. So before I get into it, I want to make something clear. When I say a narcissistic mother, I'm talking about a pattern of narcissistic behaviors. Now, I'm not diagnosing anyone with narcissistic personality disorder. Only a qualified professional can make a diagnosis. This is just about recognizing patterns that I recognize with my narcissistic mother, and understanding what those patterns can do to a child. I'm simply using my experience here to help others. Sometimes the hardest part of recognizing this is that something was wrong, but it's also accepting that it was wrong even though she was your mother. Now, the narcissistic mother. The mother everyone else knows. One of the most confusing things about growing up with a narcissistic mother is that other people may have absolutely no idea what you're talking about, because outside the home she's charming, she's charismatic, she's generous, she might be the woman everyone goes to for advice, constantly talks about how much she loves her children. So people may look and say, your mother is such a good woman, and you're there thinking, well, if you only knew. The reason is the version of her that the outside world sees isn't necessarily the version you experience behind closed doors, and that creates an incredibly lonely childhood. You don't just have to deal with the behavior, but you have to deal with the fact that nobody believes your experience. Your feelings somehow become the problem. A narcissistic parent may struggle to make room for a child's emotional needs. I know mine did. You can be hurt, and somehow the conversation becomes about how you hurt her by saying you were hurt. You can try to explain that something she said affected you, and then suddenly you're disrespectful. You can disagree with her, and suddenly you're ungrateful. You can establish a boundary, and suddenly you're selfish. So notice what happens here. The original issue, which is the real issue that you're having, disappears. Instead of her asking, why did my child feel hurt, it becomes, how dare my child challenge me? And eventually, the child learns something very dangerous. It's safer to not have feelings. So you start swallowing your anger, you hide your disappointment, you apologize when you're wrong, you become incredibly careful about how you speak. You study her moods, you stay quiet, you know when to leave the room, and you may not even realize how abnormal that is until you're much older. Love can become conditional with narcissistic mothers. Another painful part of narcissistic parenting is that the affection can feel connected to obedience. So when you're doing what she wants, everything is fine. But when you become independent, when you make your own decision, when you choose friends she doesn't approve of, when you have a relationship she doesn't control, when you develop opinions that aren't hers, suddenly you're difficult, you've changed, you're disrespectful, and you're the problem. The message underneath all of this can become, I accept you when you fit the version of you that I want. And this is very difficult from healthy love. Healthy parental love allows a child to grow into an individual, and a narcissistic parent may experience that individuality as rejection, because if you're becoming your own person, she no longer has the same control over you, and you're not allowed to outgrow her. So, this is something that doesn't get talked about enough. Narcissistic mothers can struggle when their children begin becoming independent adults. Your success can become uncomfortable, your confidence can become threatening to them, your relationships can become competition, your achievements may be minimized. And sometimes, instead of celebrating your growth, you find yourself being pulled back down. You finally accomplish something you're so proud of, and instead of hearing "I'm proud of you," you hear, "Why wasn't that impressive?" You make a decision for your own life, and instead of receiving support, you receive criticism. And eventually, you learn how to become happy without needing her approval. But what that does is it can become where the relationship becomes especially difficult, because the child who once depended on her is becoming an adult who can make decisions without her. Now, here's where guilt becomes a weapon. One of the strongest tools in a dysfunctional parent-child relationship can be guilt. Sometimes it's a simple sentence: "After everything I've done for you, I've sacrificed my whole life for you. You don't appreciate anything I do for you. Fine, do whatever you want." And now you're sitting there feeling like you committed some terrible crime, even though you have very valid feelings. So somehow you're now responsible for her emotions. And this can create adults who feel guilty for saying no, adults who feel guilty for resting, adults who feel guilty for spending money on themselves, who feel guilty for moving away, or even having a life, because somewhere along the way they learned that taking care of themselves meant abandoning someone else. Another thing that can happen with the narcissistic mothers is that one child will always be treated as the favorite, while another will become the one blamed for everything. The other may become the peacemaker, the child who tries to keep quiet and make everyone happy. And this is the one who listens to everyone's problem. So, you tend to realize these rules that can follow you into adulthood. You might become the person who automatically tries to fix every argument. And then you may wonder, why am I like this? But sometimes the answer isn't that something is wrong with your personality, but it's because you've learned these behaviors because they've helped you survive your childhood environment. I think the hardest realization, and maybe the most painful, is that you may spend your years trying to become the perfect daughter or son because you believe that eventually, if you get it right, she'll finally give you the love and approval you've been waiting on. So you try harder, you explain yourself better to her, you achieve more, you become even more obedient, and you keep giving her chances after chances. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, who's the problem? Is it you, or is it your narcissistic mother? Healing doesn't mean becoming cruel. Healing doesn't mean you have to hate your mother. She is your mother at the end of the day, yes, but you don't have to hate her. You can dislike what she did to you. Doesn't mean you have to punish her. Doesn't mean you have to become cold. It means you finally start recognizing that understanding someone's behavior does not require you to continue accepting harmful behavior. You can understand that she's had her own wounds. You can understand that perhaps she had a difficult childhood, and still say, that's not okay for me anymore. Sometimes healing looks like boundaries. It means limiting what you share, it means refusing to agree, and it means creating emotional distance. If you have the ability to move away, do so. It'll help with your boundaries. I want you to notice that your experience matters. You don't have to prove your pain to everyone, and you don't have to convince people who weren't there. Not everyone is going to understand narcissism, because not all families are the same. You are allowed to stop blaming yourself, though, for surviving the environment you grew up in, because sometimes healing begins when you stop asking, how can I finally make her treat me differently, and start asking, what can I do to protect the person I've become? And that person is worth protecting. So, okay, guys, thank you so much for watching. I would like to dive into more narcissistic roles in families, since I grew up with a narcissistic mother, I grew up with an abusive father, and it really affected me and my sibling till he turned into a narcissist himself. So I'd really like to explore these themes in my upcoming videos, so please give me any feedback. And of course, please like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you in my next video. Okay, guys, bye for now.